Hello and welcome. This is going to be an interesting evening, and to meeting all of you. I think a lot of you belong to Mohi. Do you? Yeah. Okay, good. And other interested people that want to hear about what I'm going to speak on tonight. Okay, so first of all, my name is Marylin Oliver Bard, and I must introduce myself properly. My father was Emmett Oliver. On his native side, he was Chinook and enrolled Quinault. My mother was Georgia Aveda Oliver, and on her native side, she was a Sleta and Laguna Pueblo from the Bear Clan. I am also enrolled in the Quinault Indian Nation. I'm an educator, teacher, speech therapist for the Seattle Public Schools, referred to as a community leader with the University of Washington. I sit on the advisory board for the ASUW Shell House, and now a board member on the Puget Sound Maritime Historical Society and the Seattle Perugia Sister City Association. First of all, we have a land acknowledgement for the purpose of this talk in history. We recognize that we stand on the lands and the waters of the Coast Salish peoples, the Duwamish, the Muckleshoot, the Suquamish, and the Tulalip. The Duwamish land literally means people of the inside of Puget Sound. It is important to reconnect all of us to the waterways and to our many histories, to build community in a place full of meaning and natural beauty. As we move along, we're to talk a little bit about the water lines. And I would just like to say, as we move from Lake Union to Lake Washington, it created during the last glaciation. In the last 150 years, the lakes, ooh, nice and cool, has been significantly impacted by the construction of the Lake Washington Ship Canal, along with the industrial development and intense urban use. Nonetheless, it's still possible to get a sense of the lakes before 1850, especially while traveling the water's edge in a canoe, a boat, or a bicycle. The tour takes you along places like Lake Union and Lake Washington, Union Bay, Shore, and best evoke its pre-settlement past as well as significant sites of industrial and naval history. And as you see where we're going is that there are a lot of native villages here, longhouses, and over to the right is where they had native burials in this area here. And then we're going to get closer into Lake Washington now. And I don't want to speed ahead, but we have the ASUW Shell House coming up on our port side. Anyway, right here. And I have been associated with them since 2018 when my father's honor canoe was put in there for the last few years. And it's a very special place, and it's under an $18 million restoration. Oh, and there are some, but in this area here, this is a burial ground here. So what they used to say is that when they put the deceased in a tree or in a canoe, then the DNA, they would go to the ground, and that would go into the trees and the cedar. And as we in the shell house, we could see that our ancestors were there. One thing I want to say about coming here this morning, I live on Inland Kingston, but I thought it was very special. The ancestors were on the water this morning. The fog was out, thick. There were so many ancestors. I mean, I was amazed. And they were telling me, speak up today. Today is a happy day for us. Thank you. And my hands go up to them because of that. And I don't think they settle down until about noon. So we always tell that story when we're out of the canoe, is when we see the fog. Oh, the ancestors are out there. What are they telling us today? Okay, Now, I have a rule. Everyone has a rule. And I'm going to tell you this to start with. Okay. This is a canoe. And this is a boat. This is called the B word. You do not call a canoe the B word. It's always the canoe. We are in a ship. Okay, so let's not confuse that this is a canoe and this is a ship. If you get them mixed up and you call this the B word, you could be thrown overboard. Okay, did you get that? And I'll tell you, I was with a group of 4th graders in March, and that's all they can do was talking about, the boat going. I go, okay, hold it. Canoe, boat. And then the university students, I was talking with them, and they were going out to practice, and they said, well, the students still call it the B word. I go, well, they have to learn. Okay, so that's what I'm showing you today. If you don't learn anything else, this is a canoe, and this is a boat. So, say you're going to go to the landings, like this one is Squamish, this year it's in Puyallup and Tacoma. If you go along the beach and you see someone's canoe, you say, oh, that is a beautiful canoe. Where did you come from? Well, we came from Bella Bella. Oh my heavens, welcome. See? You called it the right name. So we've had enough of that now. Now, the other thing is that they wanted me to mention a few things about the water lines. This was made up with several people from the Burke, and in it right now it is being remade. So we will see this again here at Mohi, and it has a lot of the history about the different water lines that you see out there, and they're working on it. So look for it. It'll be here. I will just mention a few things. Okay, so let us begin with what is a tradition? First of all, I'm going to be speaking tonight because it's the 35th year of the paddle to Seattle. Okay, that's when the canoes came out for the 100th year Washington State Centennial. And I'm talking about the past and the present. So I'm going to take you on this journey as we move through the waters of Lake Union. I'll be showing you some of the videos. Am I okay?
Perfect.
Okay.
I'm letting you know our course. We're going to go this way down. Okay. Go across, Medina, head north, come back that way, just for your narration.
Okay, good. Okay. So I have to remember these certain points where I'm just going to show. Okay, we passed the logs, so we'll talk about that when we come back. Okay, then let me start over again. What is a tradition and why is it important? Traditions, information, customs, beliefs are passed down from generations to generations. A shared sense of belonging, cultural ties, identity, providing us with a connection with the past that helps us understand our place in the world. As David Nell stated in his book, The Great Canoes, Reviving a Northwest Tradition, the canoe is a metaphor for community. In a canoe, as in any community, we must all work together. When something is so precious and is nearly lost, those of us who value it cling to the precious entity to elevate its rightful status, such as we are in the Virginia 5. It's lucky to be here after all of its restoration. The ASUW shell house that we just passed is under a restoration. Other historical landmarks we have, and the revitalization of canoes. As it is, you'll hear, the Northwest Dugout Canoe was a gift to the Tawana people from the ancestral cedar tree. You will see in the upcoming video of my father talking about the cedar tree and the women that are singing and blessing the cedar tree. as every part of the cedar tree was used for shelter, clothing, robes, baskets. None of it was wasted. And the song that you're going to hear that's in that particular video is this song that they still sing at protocols. It's that beautiful. So let me give you a little bit of background about my dad, because I'm going to be speaking about him and what he was doing with the Washington State Centennial and the Paddle to Seattle. But a little background about him. He was born in South Bend, Washington. He lived on a hill with Norwegian neighborhood. He was raised in near poverty with some unchallenging environments, adversity, dropping out of school twice. Yet due to positive role models and supportive mother, he became a success. Finishing high school, attended college. He was determined to get a college degree. He got his master's at the University of Washington, attended the Coast Guard Academy, and became a commander. He taught, coached, and counseled both white and Indian schools. He took a job as director of Indian Cultural Center at UCLA, recruiting Native students. Later joined the Division of Minority Affairs at the University of Washington, where he continued to recruit Native students as part of their Indian student division. Eventually, very important, he became the first supervisor of Indian education for the state of Washington under the superintendent of public instruction until he retired. So I think that's where he got his vision and his determination of what he was going to do for the state of Washington. Okay, so now I'm going to give you a little more of the background of the 100th year anniversary of the Washington State Centennial and the Canoe project. The timeline is from 1984 to 1989. Sometimes I leave out the years, but I'm going to try to include them just so that you get kind of a timeline of it. Starting in 84, John Spellman appointed my father to the Washington Heritage Council. And in 85, dugout canoes were almost a lost art in the Pacific Northwest, and those in existence were found mostly in museums. Then in 87, my father sat on the Washington State Centennial Commission, along with Secretary of State Ralph Monroe and Lady Jean Gardner. He served and reported to the Maritime Committee. My father, Emmett Oliver, thought about, at that time, why would the state be celebrating our 100th year statehood without the indigenous canoe history and culture? He thought, why are we having just tall ships and no canoes? He fought for the idea. He was appointed coordinator of the Native American Canoe Project to plan the 89 event called the Paddle to Seattle. As coordinator, Emmett had complete responsibility, no authority, and inadequate funding. Some of the pictures that you're going to see up here, this is all of 89. This was with the landing that you see in the background as I'm speaking.
Wow.
He said some tribal members and people, for good reason, objected to the celebrating 100 years of statehood. Their ancestors had been here for 8,000 years, and now they only had a part of what they previously occupied. His quote was, and reason was, the appeal I made was for restoration. If you believed what you had was good, why wouldn't you want to perpetuate it? As important as the canoe is to native lore and way of life, can you tolerate it being lost forever? And you can think of other things that may have been lost forever. They saw the value of restoring something tangible of the past. So over the next few years, he was to create and stage the event. His idea was to have the Washington tribes carve their own canoes, assemble and paddle across Puget Sound as a flotilla of canoes on July 21st, 1989. They all hoped that this would be a celebration of reawakening Native customs and traditions. That was a good idea, but it had a lot of practical limitations and questions. First of all, were there enough canoes left for the tribes? Were the tribes willing to participate and sufficient carvers to carve and make the canoes and stage the event? Canoes had not been carved in over 50 years, and for some 70 years. Plus, canoes had not landed on the shores of Washington in over 100 years. The first step was to find the logs. Could the state and national parks and forest services be persuaded to part with old growth trees? 5 foot in diameter and 70 feet tall, needed of red cedar. How are they going to move these 70-foot trees over roads onto highways? Few people had the skills and the techniques to carve the canoes. They reached out to non-native carvers like Bill Holm, Dwayne Pasqua, and others, which I'm sure some of you are familiar with. Would the city and state provide space on the Sound near Seattle to receive and camp the paddlers? Golden Gardens on Chilchil Bay was finally decided. Paddlers had to learn how to handle and paddle the canoes in open waters. And would there be enough funding for the Centennial Project to support this event? A lot of the funding came from the state, but there were also the donation of the logs. And I have all of that information of the past and the budgets. Planning got underway in '86, but carving couldn't take place until the permits were granted and the giant cedars were found, felled, and hauled to reservations. In the video that you're going to see a little later is of my father, who got permission from the U.S. Forest Service to fell the 600 old cedars, under the 1978 Religious Freedom Act because of the canoes' religious and ceremonial nature. That's very important. That's always brought up. That's the reason that they could have the cedar trees. 2 trees were felled for each tribe. There were almost, as they say, about 20 tribes. The Swinomish, there was one family that went to every single meeting my father had, and they wanted 2 logs. 1 log was going to be for their canoe, and the other log was going to be for their totem pole. And that's what happened. Okay. The steering committee scheduled carving workshops, organized canoe activities of the event. Now, this was when they had all the representatives of the tribes that met at Daybreak Star, if you know where that is, over near Magnolia and Seattle. I must emphasize, though, that in '89, the Quillians at La Push made canoe carving and paddling an Indian culture educational program in their schools. They had a 340-mile round trip sea to Sound. They retraced the route used for trade. They said, it's a taste of our ancestors. See, our ancestors are all speaking today. Brought that up. A cultural heritage archive was created showing the tribal elders and students. More than 300 hours of video was produced and more than 1,000 slides. I have copies of all of those VHS tapes and all its history to turn over to a place such as Ojai, so that in 1929, when we celebrate 40 years of the paddle to Seattle, we have that history, because I know each and every one of you are interested in the history. Not sure what that one means. Okay, so 13 canoes were to 18. And in 1988, trees were felled for Port Gamble, but a snag developed. They had to make a second trip to the national park to select more trees. The National Guard couldn't haul logs over 50 feet. 11-man racing canoes are 52 feet. Now, some over 60 feet. Private companies were contacted, and later the National Guard came through again to transport the logs. But could the trucks be allowed to get on the ferry? And that was the truck that had the Suquamish logs. And the ferry said, you can't go Well, there's another way to get over that. They got on the ferry. You know, there's always those little bumps in the road, you know, whenever you're doing something or wherever. Then Emmett reported to the Maritime Committee that the final trees needed for the canoes would be cut on April 22nd. Skagit Valley Herald up north was there to cover the felling. The felling, meaning that they were going to cut them down. I have over here, when you have a chance at my table, there's the copy of the actual article of when they went up to cut the trees down. But the next thing is that they covered it, and this is what was said again. It went like this: like the deep, slow beat of a heart from within the mountains themselves, Indian drums beat for the spirit of the old-grown cedar trees. It was said, Mara Moses' eyes filled with tears at the sight and sound of this long-lost part of her heritage. The 77-year-old elder of the Tulalip tribe said, I can see the old people again. I don't want to dwell on it. It's too moving for me. She said thanks, and then planted the cedar seedling in a hole dug in the soil. She said, what we take from the earth, we must give back. By April '89, Suquamish was chosen the rendezvous site. Just weeks away when Golden Gardens was agreed to waive their ban on camping in city parks. The city said that they could camp in the parking lot. And my father said, these canoes and these people have come so far that I am not going to have them sleep on cement. So he persuaded him that Shilshole Bay was an ancient Indian beaching site to which they had an 8,000-year-old priority and treating rights. We are sleeping on the beach. Lots of things took place before the departure. Back at Suquamish, the canoes, the paddlers, non-participants, onlookers gathered at the beach at Old Man House. You're going to see that in the video too coming up. The site of Chief Self-fabled Longhouse. Some in cedar dress, about 700 to 800 people were there. Songs were given away, which is traditional. People feasted on salmon cooked over open coals presented to the elders who responded in speeches. Unproven crews, like the Quillies, off the coast, took off on July 12th for the 9-day tour and arrived after 170 miles. And there are canoes today that go longer than 170 miles. Ultimately, 20 tribes, 40 canoes participated in the Centennial. So this included the carved canoes, the racing canoes, international canoes, Bella Bella Hooksack from Vancouver, British Columbia, and the Norwegian Maoris. 2 visitors from Estonia came with TV crews from Scandinavia to film a documentary, and many more documentaries since then are surrounded about Canoe Journey today, and you're going to see one of those documentaries later on about the University of Washington that followed those students for months, and another one is called The Canoe Way, Sacred Journey. So crews were brief. The course safety measures said the day came. My father, being a commander in the Coast Guard, aborted a Coast Guard command ship with a radio patrolling the route and available for emergencies. That is what I have over at the table. I have the chart that shows the exact part, the course, the route that he had on a chart, and I just took the chart and made a copy of it to make it like 11 by 17. But that's on the table. I have other things. We're going to stop here because we're going to go on to another part, and that will be about, I'm not sure where, when are we doing the next one? That will be a video about that was made by the Superintendent of Public Instruction in March of 2017. The first part talks about the maritime history of the Puget Sound area. The second part is speaking with the Forest System Service, thanking the cedar tree, and the Forest Service interview and the cutting of the tree. And my dad talks about his experience racing and the purpose of the Native heritage and challenging the youth of canoe racing. The other thing, if you're at Mohi at the exhibit that's going on right now about the history of racing, the crew racing and racing, that was the Great Race of 1941, and my father's 1936 paddle is hanging in that exhibit. So that's another thing if you want to look that one up too on YouTube. Okay, so are we going to take a break here? Okay, we're going to take a break here, and like I said, these are the pictures, these are the photographs that were taken back in 1989. I know because of the light you can't see them as well, but what I had asked the students back in March ago, when you see these photos and then I show you the other photos, can you explain to me the difference, what happened then to what happened now? And they could say, way more canoes now. And look at where, they didn't race. No, they didn't race, but that was part of the, program, because there was, from the Centennial, it had the purpose and it had the type of project was Native Canoes. Type of project said 100-year highlights, lasting and local celebration. The goal of the project was to increase public awareness of Washington's heritage, cultural peoples, and qualities of life, leaving a lasting legacy for future generations. And then the last one was enjoyment and fun for all. And that's the same thing we do today. It's fun for all. I've been on Canoe Journey now for 10 years, and to me, it's just a joy. I mean, I have been out there with some grueling times and some freighters I thought were coming after us pretty close. I've been in the fog, but the ancestors were surrounded with me and I got to safety. But it is an amazing, amazing thing to be out in the water, and I'm just glad that you could hear again, first of all, about the 35th anniversary that we celebrate, and the next thing we will come to after you see the video is the present day and what Canoe Journey is like today. Thank you. Okay, so that gave you a good idea of what my father was working with, and you could see the pullers out there, and also the women that were singing, and that song when they walked in is the same song that when the Quileutes go up to protocol, walk in singing that song, as I remember when I first saw this years and years ago, and when I see them today, it just heartwarming, that they sing the same song. So it's very dear to them. Like I said, they had their own program, and there is, VHS is there's two copies of when you see the tree that's being felled. It goes on for 2 hours. They're discussing it, how they're going to cut it down, what's going to happen. It goes on for 2 hours. I sat at my dad's house and I found all of these materials, and it was just amazing. And then you see how they filmed it. They did that in like 2 minutes. So now I'm going to just continue on and finish about 89. I remember now, this was like July 19th, and today's the 16th. So this is right within the week, okay? So now, imagine, we're back again, July 89. The flotilla of some 24 traditional canoes were ready to cross the Sound. 5,000, including the press, helicopters flying over, and television reporters welcomed the canoes to Shilshil Bay, where the native canoes had not landed for a potlatch in more than a century. Framed by the rising skyline, canoes pulled onto the beach where they were greeted and hosted by the host tribe, the Duwamish, who without land, inlets, or beach, but who put in a canoe in the water. A century earlier, they refused to make a treaty to sell any of their land because it belonged to the Great Spirit, and they could not sell what was not theirs. The canoe from Bella Bella, dressed in their traditional regalia, singing as they landed. The media recorded a roar of encouragement arose from the beach in a great surge of pride from the carvers, the canoes, the paddlers who performed as though they had manned these canoes lifelong. Their shoulders bore the tradition of 8 millennia. If you did get the invitation, you saw the photo taken by Alan Berner of Seattle Times of the 2 canoes that went to land in Elkai. And Cecile Hansen, my cousin from the Duwamish, my dad told her, go over and tell them that they need to come back over to Golden Gardens. They wanted to make that landing themselves. But then, you saw the other pictures that showed in '89 about when they were on the beach, the food was brought out by the paddlers, people on the beach, the night of celebration, drummers, singers, dancers, speakers, and again, they were able to sleep on the sandy beach, not in the parking lot. Then the canoe races were held on Saturday and Sunday. That was part of their celebration. So on the beach was a new spirit. It was then that Bella Bella, under the leadership of Frank Brown, challenged the native tribes of Washington to paddle to a potlatch on Vancouver Island in 1993 for more racing and renewal. Frank Brown is quoted, like I always like to include him when I'm speaking, saying that to lose a ceremony is to lose the past. To create a ceremony is to create a future. The paddle spirit carried over to the 1990s with a number of tribes staged a Cedar Spirit native canoe carving exhibit. The National Geographic wrote later, Oliver's Native American Canoe Project helped not only revive the art of making and racing cedar log canoes, but also ceremonial aspects, revitalizing of Native culture in the state of Washington. It was noted from the coast of Washington, 2 canoes delivered a message to the people of Washington State's birthday, signed by 21 Washington tribes. It contained the words of the great Duwamish leader, Chief Seattle, who prophesied in 1855 that Native people, traditional keepers of the land, would have to entrust the non-Native nation with these roles. He said, "The bones of your ancestors are now under feet as ours have been for millennia." The document read, "We ask you to become true American caretakers of our good earth, Mother Earth, and great waters flowing with, not on, this place now called Washington. We lived and died here for hundreds of generations, and we offer our assistance in you becoming to balance as an adult." We talked about this a little earlier about, this was 1989, and my father was asked about the state's birthday at 125 years, 25 years ago. And this is the 35th anniversary, and 2029 will be the 40th anniversary. But he had said that during that time when he asked, it was an opportunity to look into our historic past of our ancestors. Again, ancestors, those that were in the fog this morning as I crossed over from Kingston along the water to come here. Ancestors out on the water for all those hours. Indigenous culture in the beginning could not have developed and prospered without the native canoe. A people's way of life, it was the spirit of the people. That we honored the canoe as a symbol of culture worthy of a part of the 1989 Washington Centennial celebration. If you walk over the bridge in Mohi, you will look up and you will see the paddle of Seattle etched at the top, and there's some wording there. From there was only the beginning of the ones that organized Canoe Journey as we know it today. Make sure that you do get the Washington Centennial booklet that talks about some of the history. It has my father's comments from the coordinators, who was involved, and stories and comments from the people during that time. But take one of these. Also, there was a proclamation by the state of Washington that Booth Gardner, he proclaimed that July 19th and July 26th would have been Paddle to Seattle Week. Also at the end of the People's Centennial, there was an annual report too of the state of Washington. And this is something that came out afterwards. I have copies of these, but you'll see these. This is something that can come for the future too, that there was the report on it and how well that it was received. Letters to the canoe families and just look at them, because I can't go over all of the comments because there's so many of them and they're very precious. Like for instance, I'll just tell you one. Jerry Jones, he said, describes our ancestors. The canoe puts us back into harmony with nature. It's the same as finding a long lost friend. You think about great-grandfather or great-grandmother traveling with a fishing line over the side, telling stories about when they received their guardian spirits and about how the big fish got away. Stan Jones, tribal chairman of the Tulalip, said, the canoe will bring happiness to our people. Lummi, Ralph Jefferson, he was a Lummi racing skipper, explained, we're out there for our people. It really helped the community, young and old people alike. Not only for individuals, but the Lummi as a reservation. The Lummis will be going strong for years to come. The art of canoe paddling is here to stay. Fort Gamble, Jack Jones said, slalom, he was 89. There wasn't much participation then, before then. No one knew how to paddle, much less carve a canoe. He received 2 logs from the Quinaults. Anyway, so that's that portion that talks about the 89, and then we move into what Canoe Journey means today. So I'll give you another little break, and all I'm going to do then at the last, before we get home, is just tell you a couple stories about from 2009, the 20th year anniversary, to 2011, the 100 canoes, and what happened in 2012. And the reason now that we have a canoe family at the University of Washington is that my father's canoe, the Will of the Spirit, I gifted to the University of Washington last summer. So take another break, and Tim Line told to come back, and I will tell you those stories, okay? Thank you. 2011, it was the Paddle to Swinomish, and I had my father with me, and he wanted to see 100 canoes land one time in his life, and he was 98 years old. And we're sitting there the last day, the last hour of the protocol, and I could see Squaxin, that was going to be in 2012, waiting in the wings to come to the floor. And the chair took the microphone, and he looked at my dad, and he said, Emmett, do you have anything you'd like to say? And he just looked at him, and he, I don't know. And so that was my opportunity. I took the microphone, and I stood up. And I looked at the Squaxins, and I said, my father wants to see 100 canoes land once in his lifetime
I challenge you to do this. I said, he's 98 years old, he'll be 99 next year, and if you don't meet the challenge, he'll be 100 years old when we go to Quinault, and you know he's Quinault. The whole tent went up in a roar, and they took the challenge. And with that, 2012, what do you think we saw? 100 canoes come in Olympia. Not just 100, but 103. Because the skipper that I was with on his canoe, with some Maoris in their canoe, he said, he turned to me and he goes, do you think we're really going to see 100 canoes? I go, well, I don't know. I mean, I'm planning on it. And so he got on his cell phone, he called back to the Skokomish, and he said, I have 3 canoes sitting in my yard, fill them. Emmett wants to see 100 canoes. Well, guess what? The next day, when it came to landing, people would say, well, Marylin, there's like 97 canoes. Well, that's not 100. There's 98, that's not 100. Like, well, we're getting close. There's 90, that's not 100. 103 canoes came in. And my cousin, Cecile Hansen, there's a beautiful picture of her hugging my dad. And the skipper said, do you know that 100 canoes came in, but the last 3 were the ones from the Skoke that I said, fill the canoes because Emmett wants to see 100 canoes. So that was the 100 canoes in 2012. Now, up here there is a photo. Are you going to show it? There's the photo of the 103 canoes, but there's this is what's important. Before I thought there would be 100 canoes, I commissioned my brother, he's an artist. He taught for 30 years Northwest Coast Indian art at the University of Washington. And I said, Marvin, I want you to design a print called 100 Canoes. This is for Dad, okay, because we wants to see 100 canoes land. And so he did. In fact, he was out watching them, or near Lake Washington, Magnuson Park, and he's like hiding through these trees and taking pictures of the Duwamish raven, and people don't, and he's in his tennis shoes and his socks trying to get his camera. So he was taking a picture of that canoe so he could use it in his print. So we're going to get this photo up, and it's called the 100 Canoes. There it is right there. And so it's about the canoes coming from the sky to the village. And it has the Willapa spirit, my dad's honor canoe, looking proudly. There's a quote, but there are poems up here. Take a poem and read about it, because I don't have my notes in front of it, what it said. What does it say? And grab the poem, because I gotta read this. And when it came to my protocol at midnight, my father couldn't be there. It was Ralph Monroe, who, 1989, Secretary of State, he came to my protocol to speak about 1989. And I had this unveiled, and I had the camera only on the print. I said, don't film me. Show the print while I read this poem. And I did, and that was the print. And I then gifted that to the Squaxin. And it's called The Rites of Passage. It says, as the spirits of the past and those of the present ascend from the sky, we join and become one. And at the end of it, it says, Emmett's canoe, the Willapa spirit, views upon 103 invited canoes with pride and respect. Etched in the surrounded waters of the Northwest, his spirited vision, once only a delightful dream, is now fulfilled. August 2nd, 2012, in honor of my father. And, but take one, because it is beautiful. And when I had the gifting of the Will of the Spirit to the University of Washington last summer, I told the students, I said, you know, I went to see my spirit guide, and I said, I don't know when I can give this canoe up. I'm not sure when I'm ready. And I said, but I'll let them know when I'm ready. And she said to me, I saw this vision of your father talking to you, and he was handing you the keys. And he said, take these are the keys to the canoe, and do what you wish to do. And then I knew it was right for me to gift the canoe to the University of Washington Canoe family. So when we had the ceremony last August, I used one other quote from my brothers, and it says, the new canoe reminds us of our commitment to succeed in our journeys. Our determination to pursue new and creative ideas is found in tradition. To ensure that our canoes are and always be the best we can offer, share your knowledge and others as they did in the past. And I invited the two head pullers, the skipper, to come up, and I presented them with the keys to the canoe. And I said, don't lose them, okay, and get locked out of the canoe. Go forward and take this. And it was Anna Mari Cause, president of the University of Washington, and she couldn't be there. And the skipper was next to me, John Smith, who built the canoe, and he showed me on the phone. She was watching the whole thing on her phone because she was the one, when I was re-gifted the canoe back to me, and I was at a park, and I said, I'm here getting my canoe back, my father's canoe back. And I said to her, I didn't know who she was. And I said, I don't have a trailer, and I don't have any place where I can put it. And she goes, well, bring it to the University of Washington. And I go, well, how can I do that? She goes, I work there. I go, well, what do you do? And she said, well, I'm in the psychology department. Well, how can you say I can do that? She goes, because I'm the president of the University of Washington, and whatever I say, I can do. So bring it. It took almost 2 months of it sitting in the marina at Tacoma in Puyallup before the Puyallups could get it on a trailer and bring it to the shell house. Once it got to the shell house, I was so in awe that I knew the history of the shell house. I had to read the book, The Boys in the Boat, before I even got there. And working with Nicole Klein, the campaign manager, to raise the $18 million for the restoration of the shell house. That's where the Will of the Spirit lived for a few years. Right now she's getting a new floor and new seats. They were able to get her a trailer, and now she's at the Waterfront Center. But she will return back there. This year she's not going out because she's not ready, but they had another loaner. So the University of Washington, it's now, when I gifted to them last year, okay, we're almost there, I said, okay, you are the canoe family of the University of Washington. When you leave tomorrow, you ask permission to leave from shore with your new name. When you get to Elki, to Muckleshoot, you ask permission that we are the Shell House Canoe family. We ask permission to come to shore. And that's the story of the University of Washington and their newfound canoe family. So really proud of that, and my dad would be very proud of that. But if you want to pick one of these up, and there's another flyer that shows the picture, but I worked very hard to get this, my nephew up in Alaska, to get that picture so I could have it here for tonight. So I'm really glad you were able to see it. Anyway, thank you.